Okay.
Lovely. Okay, so continuing with tonight's council meeting, then we'll move on to item 4, chairman to receive matters raised by members. There is just one item that was asked to be raised, and in fact I was going to raise it myself, but Jan obviously sent me information as well that she'd like it raised, and it's just basically to say with thanks to Councillor Clark, Councillor Rolfe and Councillor Coker for the installation and removal of the poppies down the high street this year once again. Lots of lovely comments about how nice it looked, even if we didn't get to have a parade this year because of obviously COVID-19. So thank you to the three of you for taking your time out to do that. It is appreciated, and as you can hear from the comments, that people did like to see the poppies, so it, you know, it's worthwhile you doing that. So thank you very much for that.
No problems.
Becky, there was also another. I sent you an email. Katie Gash wanted to say something about what she and Jan will be doing about the playground, but I'm not sure if Katie's still here.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry,
she is.
I've been having connection issues, so I turned my camera off. I'll turn it back on. Hang on. Here I am. I'm still here. Yeah, I just wanted to update everyone, if possible, on where we're at with having some site visits over to the rec for the looking into the project of the new park. Do you want me to do that now, or is it the end?
It depends what exactly have you got to bring up, Katie?
It was just to sort of report back on what me and Jan had been doing over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to give a brief report, that's absolutely fine. Obviously, at the moment, nothing's been decided with regards to the park, whether there's going to be an upgrade or anything else. Obviously, this is preliminary stuff that you've been doing, so that the council can have a discussion for that. So I think it needs to be just made clear that this is just for information, so that councillors can be aware of what you and Jan are undertaking at the moment, as advance information to then be put forward for council to discuss as to moving forward a proposal of if council does intend to make any upgrades to existing park. So I think it needs to be clarified it is the existing park and it'll be upgrades, it won't be a brand new park.
Yeah. So just briefly then, just to say that from going on from the last meeting where we were discussing how we can move forward with what we could do, we found that we all needed a bit more information. So we thought we'd get some visits from some different companies who do parks and see what information we could gain from that, because we was all a bit in the dark about what different things we need to consider and all that sort of thing. So we've got some more information. I have done a written report, so I can share that with the council after the meeting, just to detail some of the things that some of the different companies have sort of given us ideas on, and the companies have all gone away and said that they'll have a look into sort of quotes for us, but obviously we, like you say, Becky, we're not in a position to say, okay, yeah, we'll go ahead with that. It's just really to give us ideas and find out what we could do, and the rough idea, ballpark figures of how much these things are going to cost us and which way we want to go. Yep. And I just think as a council we need to decide where we go next, and maybe we set up a working group or something to look at all the details a bit closer, because obviously there's lots of different things to look at when you start looking into it. It's not as straightforward as you know, Becky.
Yeah, and I think that was the good approach, was to go out and seek some initial information, some initial findings. That I understand that there is a talk of a extraordinary meeting to discuss council projects, and I believe that obviously when that was being discussed at the last meeting, the clerk obviously gave you an insight into that, you know, it would be beneficial to get the budget and the precept for next year organised, and then once that's organised, you can then obviously have a discussion with regards to key projects and what's going to be worked on and what's not going to be worked on in the next financial year and bits and pieces. But obviously having that initial information of what's out there, who can do it, what the regulations are, you know, and things like that is always good to be able to bring to the table to start with, because if it's something that is going to obviously logistically need a great deal of time, then obviously that might put it of a higher priority to something that's only going to take a couple of months, or council might feel that there's something that's only going to take a couple of months comes over priority of a longer project. The other thing to obviously consider is we have to consider from a financial point of view VAT spending and things like that. So and that comes into play. It doesn't come into play too much with things like the park, but it will come into play with other projects that have been discussed in the past for council to be doing. So again, it's nice to have some initial information back, so that you can sort of put some sort of ducks in a row, as it were. If you've done a written report, then great, Katie, you've obviously spent some good time on it with Jan, and yeah, to share that with councillors, so councillors can obviously have a look at. But certainly, yeah, I think that, you know, the overall feeling is that a meeting will be a separate meeting to discuss projects moving forward for the next financial year, needs to have its own dedicated special time, and I think that is fair to say that it does need to, because there's not just the elements of what projects get to put where, it's how much those projects are going to cost, it's whether those projects are chargeable by the council, things like that, you know, if they're facilities that we're providing, and things like that. So I think it does need its own dedicated meeting, and I think that obviously the aspect of you getting this initial information was a good start to be able to move forward with that additional meeting that's required. So thank you for that.
Yeah, sure, that's all right. And also to mention that Jan's also looking into some of the funding options as well, because there's lots of different areas where we could potentially gain some extra support from various different funding options. So that's also good information for us to have.
Yeah, that would be a great bonus, wouldn't it, really?
That was it.
Okay, lovely. Well, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your hard work on that, Katie. Paul, if you can pass on my thanks to Jan as well for obviously working alongside Katie with this, for her support that she's doing with this.
I thought she was here.
I am on the call.
Oh, I couldn't. Sorry, it's because I couldn't see you, Jan. Sorry, apologies. So thank you, Jan, for your continued support and the work that you're doing alongside Katie. And I understand that, you know, it's obviously been well received, and it's starting to get an organised plan together for future projects. So that's great news. So thank you for that. So that is everything for item 4. So I believe we'll move on to item 5, which is Clerk's update. Over to you, Paul.
Yep, in the interest of time, I'll whiz through this. Bear with me. So while Jan and Katie have been getting on with that, I've been trying to get some preliminary figures for the floodlights, so we can, you know, use that in our meeting. Not much to tell you yet, as I've only got one quote and one price, as it says on the screen. Richard Jackson, who some of you may know, he is involved in the Football Association, and he's happy to help with the lights, you know, give me some advice, and also on funding.
Okay.
He seems pretty hopeful that we can get funding from the FA. He says the best bet is for Field Tigers to do the funding, because they're kids and they're more likely to get a greater amount. Anyway, that's something to consider, and I haven't heard back from him yet.
Okay. So by that he means that the funding request should come from a team rather than from a council.
From a club, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Richard
what he
Jackson?
recommended.
He runs Hennick.
Who's
Yeah,
Hennick?
he's a groundsman at Hennick.
I would rather
Right.
it was one of the regular teams that actually went to apply, because I would think I don't know. No,
Well, I think that in the interest of fairness, depending on when you're going to do the floodlight project, it would obviously have to come from someone that is currently within contract with the council of using the facilities and is going to be using the facilities once they're completed. We know that Thiel Tigers obviously do wish to use the facilities. Whilst they haven't got a contract with us at the moment, there's nothing to say they won't have a contract with us going forward. And like Paul says, if they're likely to give more money to a set of kids than they are a set of adults.
If they're kids and if they're girls, they're more likely to get more money.
Oh, right. Okay.
No, I don't think there are any girls.
Okay. I suppose there's no harm in us asking all our teams to obviously send forward a request to them for floodlights for Thiel, because obviously the more requests they get for Thiel, the more they obviously will see there's the demand for them, and obviously look to supplying the funding. But I think that's obviously something that will need to be discussed at the time when it's looking to put that floodlight project into action, really.
Yeah. So that's number one. Item 2, you've just heard from Katie Gash. So I'm not sure if Jan has anything to add.
No, I don't think they've got anything to add to that. Thank you.
Okay. The High Street notice board, we're ready to go ahead and replace. I'm literally just waiting on 2 contractors with the necessary streetworks licenses. Once I have a quote for that, I'll bring it to the council, and if it's really expensive, I don't think it would be, and we can get that replaced. I've told West Berkshire Council and they seem all happy.
Okay.
The pavilion roof, I think I told you before there was a leak where the boiler room is. That's all been fixed, and we've got some spare tiles.
Good. For accidental cricket balls.
That's it, and they're expensive because they're obsolete.
Yes.
The John Cumber Hall and the pavilion have all been scrubbed. Grounds maintenance contract, by the looks of it, we've been with Scofell for at least 8 years, maybe more. And in my opinion, it's time that the contract went out for tender to see if we can either get a better price or whether Scofell can give us a better price.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll do that in the new year.
Absolutely agree. Yeah.
My suggestion I've put here is whether councillors Coker and Hopcroft, and any others if you want to, will wish to review the specification I draft before we enter the tendering process.
Yeah.
Coker as the sports guy, Hopcroft as the
environmental.
That's it.
I think that sounds like a good plan, and I think if there are obviously any other councillors that wish to be involved in that, then obviously let Paul know.
Yeah. What's this? Oh, this is fixed. The green gate that Kia put in just 1 or 2 years ago, it had dropped and was scraping on the concrete.
Yeah.
And when I checked, it wasn't scraping on the concrete, so I think they have done something to it.
Okay.
Yeah, I went over and looked at that, but I couldn't see it had dropped or it was doing running the concrete.
It has dropped, but it's not. Well, when I checked, it wasn't hitting the concrete.
No.
So I think that's okay.
Okay, I think we're just obviously, Stuart, if you are obviously using that, or if you know of anyone that's using that, I think to just obviously keep an eye on it, because that will still be current under the snaggings of if anything was untoward in the next sort of 12 months to 18 months to 2 years.
I asked Les from Calcutta, and he said he hadn't noticed that it had even dropped, and it wasn't dragging the ground. So I don't know where it came from that it was.
I think you should keep an eye on the condition of the path in North Street playing fields as well, because that is pretty poor already. We haven't gone through a winter yet. So if there is a snagging list or a 12-month period, we should keep an eye on
When
that.
you say the condition, Dan, what do you mean by that? Sorry.
Holes in it already.
What, in the tarmac?
Yeah, you can see it breaking up in patches and hasn't even had a frost on it yet.
Oh, wow. Okay.
There's actually roots of weeds coming up through it.
Yeah.
Right.
It looks like it's about a couple of centimetres thick.
Okay.
All in places.
Okay.
So,
Right.
sorry, can you just clarify where exactly?
On
So
the path.
there's the new path that's been built down the side of the school to
Oh, the path. Oh, okay.
First Plat. It's
Yeah.
pretty poor condition already.
Okay.
Okay.
That is West Berks, isn't it?
Well, it will be West Berks and
Bit of
Keir,
like,
yes.
yeah.
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 Yeah, because
Yeah.
they said they maintain it.
Mm-hmm.
Jan, did you want to say anything about your archiving?
Yes, I've been, there's an awful lot of documentation in the office that I've started to work through. Looking at the retention policy, some documents have to be kept indefinitely because of interest. So I've made a start and taken the first lot of documents, the minutes and agendas from 1983 to 2014 down to the Berkshire Records Office. That's given me a bit of space to start clearing some more of the documents. It'll take a little while, so I'll
Lovely.
update. when I do the
Probably
next
get asked for one of those now.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be typical, wouldn't it? We just managed to get it down to the records office and then someone's going to ask for it. Jan, obviously, for the stuff that you are obviously able to destroy, have you got the facilities to be able to do that? You know, is there the equipment or do we need
Yeah,
to?
You now.
We do, yes. We have a new shredder. So
okay.
that's yes. It's not only a case of sorting through and deciding, looking at the retention policy, what needs to be kept and what needs to be destroyed, but it's the destruction of those documents as well, which once again is a long old process. But yeah, we've made a start.
Okay. Lovely. Well done.
I touched the shredder once and I thought I broke it, but Jan fixed it again. I jammed.
So you're just not going to touch it again then?
No.
Okay.
The last thing is, and I think the staffing committee are okay with this. Jan and I won't be coming in for 2 weeks over Christmas, starting 21st.
Yep.
That's it.
No problem, but you will have everything in place, reference out of hours, office out. Yep, fabulous. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much, Paul. Item number 6 then, to adopt the minutes of the Parish Council meeting of the 2nd of November and authorise their signing at a later point. For those that were in attendance of the last meeting, obviously we've all had the minutes, but for those that were at the attendance of last meeting, you will be able to obviously make sure that they are an accurate set of minutes, and those that were present are those that should be voting for them to be adopted, please.
I didn't have any issues with them.
No, neither did I.
Okay. Would you like to propose them then, Alan?
Yes, I propose.
Okay. Can I have a seconder,
I'll
please?
second
The
then.
present Councillor Coker will second. For those that were at the meeting, all those in favour for those minutes to be adopted?
Yeah.
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 Can I have an abstain, please, Paul?
I'm going to abstain as well.
Yeah. I think that those that were absent from the meeting will should have an abstention. Lovely. Okie dokie. Item number 7 then, to consider and agree formal representations to planning applications appeals received since the last council meeting. The first one is for a ground floor extension and internal rearrangement to 4 North Walk. Councillor, any comments?
I've got no objection to it.
No.
No, I don't have any problems with that.
No.
No, me neither. It looked okay to me.
Okay, so council wish to enter with no objection to that one. Okay. The next one is it's an adjacent parish one, but this is a Section 74B application to temporarily modify the construction working hours authorised by the construction management plan approved pursuant to condition 11 of the planning permission of 19-01544-FUL-EXT, which is the land west of Dorking Way in Calcutta, which is where the newly Bellway Homes development is. They're looking to amend the construction working hours to 7:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday to Friday, excluding Sundays and bank holidays, and then 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturday. no construction operations shall take place on Sundays or bank holidays. They're requiring a temporary modification to be actioned from the 28th of November until the 31st of March. It's my understanding that they're already working to these hours anyway.
I personally think it's unreasonable to be working to 9 p.m. of an evening, especially in the winter, when no doubt they're using probably floodlights to light up the site, noise, etc. I don't think it's fair on the residents that live nearby to the site, and I personally would enter an objection to that one.
I'm in agreement with that, Lisa.
Yeah, so am I.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement to that, and like I say, but I think that they have actually already actioned that, to be honest, and that they are already working to those hours already before this has obviously been decided. But yes, I would certainly enter into an objection with that. I think it's unreasonable to be that late, especially when in winter weathers the cloud level is lower, which means that the noise density is higher, which means that noise travels a lot more. I think that being that it's so close to an already existing residential development, it is going to affect them. Does anyone have an objection to it being an objection then? Because I think that pretty much everyone's quite happy for it to be an objection on the grounds that it will be inconsiderate to the existing residents, that it will have an impact on noise and also light pollution.
Could also have an impact on kids going to school. If they're getting kept up to that time of night with banging.
It will have an impact on traffic, yes.
That's not good for them. They've got an education.
Okay. Happy with that for an objection?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. The next one is a single-story rear and side extension to 92 Meadow Way, Theale. Any comments, councillors? Or is council happy with that application?
I don't have a problem with that
one.
Yeah, no.
Don't seem to be looking into anybody or stopping light or anything like that, so no, can't see any problems.
Okay. Paul, I believe that's a non-objection to that one.
Yep.
And then the next one is the side and rear extension to 6 Lambfields.
I had no objection to that one either.
No, me neither.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, I think they're all unanimous then for a non-objection on that one then, Paul. Lovely. Okay. And I believe that's all of them for this week. We've received, obviously. If we receive any more, we'll have to deal with that accordingly. Moving on to item 8 then, to note West Berkshire Council planning decisions for Theale Parish since the last parish council meeting. Did we have any, Paul?
Yes. Did you not receive them?
No.
Oh, sorry, that's my fault. Bear with me.
I think they are here, Paul.
Did
They
send
are
a
in
bit.
the
It was in a separate document.
They are,
Was it?
they are
Okay.
here. Yeah. Do you want me to put them on the screen?
If you've got them to hand, Paul, that'd be appreciated. Yeah.
I have them
I'm obviously
here.
looking off the wrong email then in that case.
Yeah, that's
Lovely.
the one.
Okay, fabulous. Okay, so we have 23 Church Street, which was demolition of a single-story side garage and proposed single-story side extension approval. 51 Church Street, which was the proposed change of use from Class A1 to two-bedroom residential properties with off-street parking. That's been approved. Single and rear 2-story extension and garden room at 6 Landfields, that has been withdrawn, and obviously that's in part with the application that obviously we've looked at this evening, which is a single story extension. The variation removal of condition 4 for North Lakeside, the green, has now been removed and withdrawn. Installation of new 20-metre columns supporting 6 antennae telecommunications masts. No decision was required on that. And then construction of a garden room in concrete pads with timber frame on top at 6 Landfields. That was given an outcome of being a lawful construction. We then also got a application for non-material amendment following a grant of planning permission for a residential development comprising of 25 dwellings and associated access. This was the condition which refers to the access arrangement is condition 4 of approval. Condition 4 states the site access shall be laid out and constructed in accordance with the approval plan. This is the NAA that was approved. I think that was just a replacement of drawings. And then there was approval of reserved matters application for phase 1 of the development, which is for 7 dwellings located off of St Ives Close. The outline application for residential, and that was part of the outline application for the 325 dwellings. That again was approved.
And then there's one more which we received since I sent that. Which is this.
This is a removal of a condition within North Lakeside again. So it's the access, so it's the change of access, and that has been approved again.
Yep.
Okay. Okey-doke. Moving on to item 9, then that's to authorise payments as listed on payment schedule 561. So you've all received your payment schedule of 561. Councillors have any questions with regards to any of the items on the payment sheet?
Not for me.
I only have one question, and it's only for you to get a follow-up, Paul, is reference the Thiel Village Hall, the 50% contribution to the sewage pump replacement. Can we have confirmation from the Village Hall that that has now been rectified and resolved, and there's no further works or complications or issues with that sewage pump?
Yeah, I think it is all sorted, but yeah, I'll get confirmation.
Okay, lovely. Other than that, I don't have any issue with any of the items on the payment schedule.
There's a funny noise somewhere.
I was going to say, sounds like a machine gun. Who's got a machine gun going in the background?
It's like a toy.
No, washing machine.
Your washing machine, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You hear it rattling against the door.
Yeah, I can hear it. It sounds like a machine. I think it's like one of those kids' toy machine guns. Sorry about that.
Sorry,
right,
one question.
Go on,
Paul,
one
there's
question.
a line on
Yeah.
the second page which relates to expenses, which says 0 against it. I assume that's correct.
Yeah, well, there will be expenses, but for this payment schedule, yes, it's 0.
Okay.
Jan diligently left me a place to put in my expenses, and I haven't managed to work it out.
Oh.
We'll go with that then. That looks good.
Yeah, get it. Can I have a proposer and seconder to pay the bills, please?
Yeah, happy to propose we pay them.
Happy to second.
Okay, Councillor Clifford and Councillor Baker. Lovely, thank you. I assume there are no objections from all other councillors.
No.
Lovely. Okay. Item 10 then, to receive a letter from Mary Tierney, trustee of the John Cumber Hall charity, about the financial state of the John Cumber Hall. You have all received your letter. I hope you've had a chance to read through that.
Have we got any information about sort of the rental income it earns during the course of the year? So not basing it on this year when no one's been able to.
No, I was going to say, not based on this year, no.
I was under the impression it was increasing, which was part of the reason why we agreed to do some of the enhancements and the refurb.
Yeah, it was.
And then the expectation that it was going to be quite popular. I'm just trying to get a gauge as to what that means in terms of financials.
I can tell you the income from hirers for 2019.
Yep.
And that was, well, for regular hirers was just shy of 5,900, and for casual was 1,400. I have no idea whether that's up or down from 2018.
Do you know what the associated costs of running the hall were, Paul?
What, in 2019?
Yeah.
Well, the management cost that was submitted for 2019 would have been the 5.5, wasn't it, Paul?
That's what we charged them. It actually
No, sorry, not our cost.
The cost of the hall.
Yeah. Thinking the cost of any
heating,
any bills, heating it, electricity, any rates that are chargeable on it, maintenance.
For some reason it's not totaling it. It is about, so the management fees, they paid 4,125 in 2019 plus 800. I'll just give you an estimate, bear with me.
That management fee was ours, Paul, I'm assuming.
Yeah. In 2019, the total cost was 6,000.
What costs is that, including running costs?
That's management fees, maintenance, utilities, cleaning supplies, equipment, and other, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
And that number was, sorry?
It was 6,000.
6,000.
Yeah. Approximately.
And there's no rates or anything like that payable on that building, is that right? Because it's community use.
I think that's right. Yeah.
I don't think they pay business rates on that because it's part of a charitable trust, isn't it?
So that's my question then. So Becky, that's the question I have, that if we take on ownership of this building as proposed by Mary Tierney, so several questions. One, do we need to pay any sort of fee to the charity for taking on the building? Two, does it still remain a charitable trust? And three, would we still have to abide by the ban on alcohol? Because I think if we were to take it on, we could increase bookings if we allowed alcohol into the building. You know, if someone wants to have a christening party down there and they want to take in a few bottles of wine, you're probably more likely to get the hiring than if we say, actually, you can't take in any alcohol at all.
Okay.
And sorry, what exactly do our management fees cover? Is that time for somebody to manage the bookings, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time to manage the bookings, time to manage the staff, time to basically manage the whole kit and caboodle.
Paul, did that cost, did that include cleaning as well?
Yeah, I thought it did. He read it out on one of the line items.
Cleaning kit.
Cleaning kits, yeah, supply, not the salary for the cleaner.
So just going back to what Lisa stepped on, Lisa, with regards to obviously rates, yeah, I mean, that's something that would need to be looked into. We would need to look into that. Obviously, if we did take it on, would we then be incurring business rates?
No, that
Because
wasn't
we're
my
not
question.
a charitable trust.
That wasn't my question. Yeah, it's not about rates, but whether we'd have to carry it on as a charitable trust. And if we do, are we then, do we have to abide by some of the restrictions, i.e. the no alcohol?
Well, the information given in Mary's letter is that that them as the trust are willing to gift it to the parish council. Now, by doing so, by gifting it to the parish council, that then it would require obviously a solicitor, and it would require a change of deeds and ownership and everything else. But I think that what that would basically be is that actually that would be owned by the parish council. As far as
I'm not convinced the
alcohol,
letter is clear on that.
sorry,
I'm not convinced the letter is clear on that. She's asking if we would be prepared to take over the ownership. She's not telling us what conditions might be attached to that. So I think we need to go back and ask the questions.
I think all that will get worked. I think we need to be discussing today with the information we've got as merely sort of an in principle, are we interested in taking on? If we were, then there's all your questions you're raising are absolutely valid, Lisa, about conditions that apply across it, what would be the ownership structure. I personally think it would be of interest to potentially take over.
I think what you've got, I think there's a way of looking at it is the trust, the charitable trust, and obviously Mary herself, who it seems that Mary is the only one that does anything for it, work-wise within the charitable trust. It gives the impression that obviously, you know, they have come to the end of, they don't want to be it costing them money. So therefore, it's a case of, if we wished for that John Cumber Hall to continue as a community asset and somewhere for where it can be used by the residents of Theo and the community of Theo, and obviously wider and bits and pieces like that, that obviously the most obvious thing is that looking into taking ownership of it. I think that otherwise you're opening the gates for it to be acquired by someone else, for then to there to be a change of use, for then to there be a planning application for actually the removal of that hall, because there is already a residential area there. There's nothing to stop that hall being removed and a couple more residential properties going in its place. So I think that, you know, the question the council should be considering is do they wish to consider it? Because by considering it, they are the only ones that are probably going to be able to keep it as a building for the community.
Yeah, I would be in favour of taking it over, provided we get these questions about business rates and such like answered. I think also another one, just to add to Lisa's point about the restrictions on alcohol, is if we are not bound by them, what does that, you know, and we want to let hirers bring in alcohol, does that incur costs to us in terms of licensing, etc.?
Well, it would do, yeah. You would have to have an alcohol license.
How do we just initial thoughts on how we actually might manage that?
Yeah, I'd be supportive of looking at
license if we weren't selling alcohol.
I think you might need to. I'm not sure. I don't know. I can't remember everything.
I know when I looked into it for the Christmas event, we didn't need a license.
So the alcohol part is probably going to depend if there's a covenant on that building, I would guess.
If that's my point, is there a covenant on that building?
Depending on which way you read the letter, depends on whether you read the letter as it's going to be gifted or whether we're interested in taking on the assets.
I think we need a lot more information.
So I think there's a principle. I guess there's a couple of things in there. In principle, would we be interested in continuing a conversation with Mary? There's also the other question around the cost that she's asking us to look into for this year as well.
I do think we should waive them. The hall has not been used since lockdown. We waived the costs when they were building Cumber Place because it wasn't used then.
And I tend to agree with Dan on that point. I don't think we're going to see any of that money, so we might as well just waive it.
So,
I wouldn't say waive it completely. There has been work that has been done by the parish council since lockdown, in cancelling bookings, in still keeping regular hires informed. So from a management point of view, I wouldn't say that it would be suggested to waive complete costs, because we have done work on that, and I do think that those that have spent the time on it, we've obviously had to pay their wages, and so therefore we should recoup some costs. Granted, I think it's in the same situation with the likes of the cricket club, that obviously they're looking for a discount, a dispensation on that, but I don't think that it should be completely written off, because there was work involved, and there has been work involved all year, even though there hasn't been hirers. There has been the odd hire when we have been able to out of lockdown, and there has still been cleaning costs and the upkeep of those cleaning costs and things like that. So I don't think that council should jump ahead and just say, oh well, we'll waiver it all completely. I think that that's something that needs to have a little bit more thought into it.
Just to give a bit more information about the bank balance, at the end of 2019 it was 7,900. At where we are in 2020 at the moment, the balance is 2,100. And the invoice for the last 3 months management fee hasn't been paid.
How much was that, Paul?
It will be 1,125. Is that a quarter of £5,500?
Paul, who pays the insurances? Do we pay it and then bill the trust, or do the trust insure the building directly?
The John Cumber Hall does it directly, and I'm pretty sure.
I think at the end of the day, we have to discuss whether we want, whether we want this hall to go under and just be written off, or whether we want to try for the community.
So I think there's a couple of options. There's that option in there. There's also the option as to whether there's anything that's not called out on here as to supporting the trust as well, and allowing the hall to stay as financially viable within the trust. I get the impression that that's probably not what Mary wants.
So a question I've got, sorry, if it carries on as a trust and Mary is the last trustee, my understanding is she's not that young anymore. So what happens when there are no other trustees left to that building?
Reading between the lines of the letter, I get the impression that they don't want it anymore, and if we don't take it, they'll possibly sell it to the highest bidder.
I get that impression.
That's my impression of it as well.
Yeah, I get the impression that the trust wants to read.
Having spoken with Mary in the past, I do know her children are not interested in taking it on.
Sorry, Jan, I could barely hear you on that one. Do you want to try and get closer to your mic?
Hang on, let me see if I can put it up a bit. Having spoken to Mary in the past, I do know her children are not interested in taking it on. Mary seems to be the last man standing.
Right.
So yeah, I think we should go in the process of just doing a bit of further due diligence on what the costs are, what the potential higher revenues are, who the current community groups are. I was hearing that it was being increasingly used and was being used by local community groups. So I think it'd be a great facility and be able to try and maintain for the village. And so the headline numbers don't seem to be massively out in terms of it becoming a major sort of revenue loser.
Would it be helpful if Paul and I had a meeting with Mary?
Absolutely, yeah. I think
in that case we should all probably put our questions down so that Paul and Jan have them to refer to.
Send your questions to Paul.
Yeah.
And then
is there any?
If that's okay with Paul.
Is there anyone online who doesn't think we should even look at taking it on?
No, I think that we should be looking to keep it, to be honest.
I think we should. I think it's a valuable asset to the village, to the community of Thiel. I think it would be a great shame for us to not do anything about it and then see it being sold to then be, you know, at worst destroyed, and then something else residential put in its place or something like that. I think that, you know, there's very little community space within the village already.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to when we lost on the space out the back of the library. We were disappointed to lose that space. We had
Absolutely,
thoughts
and that's a prime example. That, yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing to consider is if we're looking at an approximate running cost of, you know, even if you said sort of anywhere between £6,000 and £8,000 a year, on 2019, which was, like you say, when it was really starting to pick up again, we had regular hires and things like that. You were looking at an income of 7,300. So, you know, that it was pretty much paying for itself. I know that obviously at the moment times are very troubled at the moment, and that's probably not going to be the case directly. But the other thing to consider is we do have funds within the council that we gained from as compensation from the loss of the land from North Street playing fields as part of a compensation, which obviously would be nice to see that money used towards something for the community. Now, if that meant that some of that money would need to be used to obviously hold up running costs of something like said John Cumber Hall, if it was then transferred to the ownership of Thiel Parish Council, we're obviously in that position to have that. I'm not saying we should, and I'm not saying for definite that that's what would happen, but I think councillors obviously need to be aware that there is the initial funds available to keep that asset should the council wish to do that. So
it's got funding options through the precipt as well.
Absolutely,
it's a community facility. It can get charged in other ways other than just hirers.
Yeah,
I've had a lot of spent on it this year.
So
I didn't hear that.
Had a lot of spent, so it's looking a lot better than what it was.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, because I apologise, I'm a bit out of touch with what's going on down there, but what work has been done, and is there anything more that needs to be done to make it more attractive to hirers, like the kitchen refit, something like that?
Had new windows, a new door, and the whole thing has been painted and refurbished. A lot of the chairs and miscellaneous stuff from the cupboard has been got rid of, so there's a lot more room. The kitchen has been painted as well. The toilets have been cleaned and painted. It looks a hell of a lot better.
Okay. So the only possible thing that might need to be done in time is a bit more of a tart up in the kitchen along the lines of cupboards and appliances, perhaps. In time.
We've had a whole new boiler. Yeah, had a new boiler and water heater done, so that's been done as well.
Yeah.
So it's looking, I mean, I don't think anybody's seen it because obviously we've been on lockdown, but it's looking a lot better. And Irina, the cleaner, is very fastidious. And
so I think then really from a council's point of view, you know, the consensus is that councillors don't wish to obviously lose this as a community asset, that obviously going forward, in order to obviously look into this, to move forward with this, then I think that the best option would be for councillors to put any concerns and questions that they might have, to put that forward to Paul, and obviously then Paul and Jan has quite kindly offered to meet with Mary be that whether you can meet socially distanced, Paul,
Yeah.
at John Cumber and take some tea and cake or tea and biscuits down there and meet at John Cumber, socially distanced, to have that meeting in person, to be slightly more personable than what it would be either via Teams or anything like that. And then I think that this would need to be then a matter for the agenda next month. But I think that obviously because of the sensitivity of it and the discussion with regards around of what might be the discussion and outcome of the questions involved, it might well be something that council will need to obviously initially have in part 2 of a meeting, so that frank details can be given, because obviously Mary may not wish for those details to be public knowledge, and so that can be dealt with in a part 2 of next month's meeting. And then moving forward, any motion that council wish to put forward can be done as so in that part 2.
Yeah, no problem with that.
But I think that obviously what does need to be announced as well, because obviously this meeting is recorded, that anything that is within the part 2 of the next meeting regards to that can be shared publicly to the community, because obviously if the community see this, they're then going to know that the John Cumber Hall may well be at risk. I think that, you know, transparency will be key, that if there is any information from that meeting, that whilst it is in a part 2, but there are some that can be disclosed, we should obviously keep the residents informed of what the council is intending to do and how they're intending to do it. Okay.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Lovely. Right, okay. Item 11 then, to approve provisionally the draft budget proposal for the next financial year. So I'm going to hand you over to Paul for this.
Well, you should all have received the draft budget, and hopefully it makes sense. The yellow highlighted stuff is basically the most significant changes from last year's budget figure. I have also sent you a spreadsheet detailing proposed movement of reserves for this financial year and the next, which Alan, the accountant, did. That is basically an exercise in encouraging the council to allocate its reserves more reasonably. It is a separate thing from the budget, so it's not as pressing as the budget is. The deadline for submitting our precept request will be, is it February sometime? But we have to do it in the meeting that we have scheduled at the end of January. So this is just to get your initial thoughts, and if there's anything that's, you know, glaringly horrific, you can say it now. Any questions?
The 40,000 earmark for the floodlights. Is there any background as to how that number's changed significantly? So I remember hearing figures knocked around about sort of £12,000–15,000 to get the floodlights back online.
As I said, I've only got one quote back so far, and that comes to 30,000. 40,000 is a very conservative figure.
Conservative?
As in a worst case scenario.
Oh, sorry, yeah. On the budget says the first quote was 19.
Yeah, but that wasn't including the groundworks, which is an extra 9 or 10. It's
So,
basically 30.
For the floodlight project, is it just to fix the lights, or are we having to replace poles and basically start from scratch again?
We have to replace the poles, and the cabling all has to go underground.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would explain why it's obviously a considerable sum of money. Thank you.
So we reckon it's likely to be about probably 35-ish. give or take as a realistic figure, but we're putting in 40 to be on the safe side.
I would hope it would be about 30, but even less if we have some funding.
I was
So,
going
yeah.
to say, are we able to get a grant?
Yeah, I thought 40 is to be on the safe side.
I mean, the conversation that we had with both Colin and Alan was that you should always base it on a worst case scenario. The other thing we were advised by both Colin and Alan was that obviously because of the shortfall this year, and knowing that there are going to be more coming our way from district councils and bits and pieces, in the past the previous clerks have always tried to keep the precept to the minimum that was required, and we've since found out that actually that isn't the correct way to do things, and on the advice of Colin and Alan, this is how this budget has come out this year, to take into account the shortfalls from this year, COVID-19 and bits and pieces, to take into account any additional discrepancies that might, and little gremlins that might come into next year, but also to be in a position where we haven't got to scrape to find what we need to, that it's been budgeted correctly, as it were, and that's why it's obviously slightly different from previous years, but obviously there's been a lot of advice that's come through from Alan Harland, and there's a lot of advice that's come through from Colin, from his expertise of where he's been and what he's been and what he's done, and the different departments that he's been within. The discussion was also around the fact that there's going to be hefty rises from our suppliers, be that contractors from grass cutting or anything like that, because obviously everyone is going to be playing catch up from this year of losses and things like that. So we in turn must make sure that we don't have those losses.
And so one other question I've got, and again, apologies because I'm playing catch up, but I know that we've been talking about play equipment for the playground. I know we'll probably look at getting some grants and stuff, but is there anything in here on that? Because I can't see it.
Not in the budget. That'll be a matter of how we wish to allocate our reserves.
Right.
So that's what Alan's spreadsheet is.
Yeah.
Got you. Right. I'm mainly looking at the budget one at the moment.
And basically assuming that you won't be spending money on a playground in the next year.
No. Mm-hmm.
Not that there's anything to stop you, of course, but
yeah. Well, it's going to be a big project anyway, so.
Yeah.
Is there any implication if you put 40,000 in the budget for floodlights, then we decide we don't want to do that as a project?
Sorry, what is there any?
What's the ramifications if you put that in your budget, you charge out in the precept, and then maybe decide that you don't want to do that, deliver that as a project? Is that
as long as you have a reason,
right,
which I think is fine.
I imagine we've just got to make sure we've got a business case for whatever the alternative product is.
Yeah.
The only time it could possibly come up is when the external auditor raises a query and he says, "Why did you do this?" We just have to give a sensible reason.
Because we were always talking about a number in sort of 12 to 15,000 to like that sort of muddy corner of the wreck. If it's going to be 40 grand to do it, I'd be questioning whether is that worth it? Are there other options that are being looked at around the village in terms of sports provisions? I understand Field Green are looking at their floodlit pitches and what they might do there as well. So if we're starting to become a 40 grand project, I might look at it slightly differently. But if it's for planning purposes, then we can do that, and it doesn't matter if we don't necessarily deliver it. Go for the worst case.
Also, if we're going to start spending that much, I know a couple of the companies that we were talking to about parks had also mentioned muggers, and prices of those sort of starting at 50k mark. So, it's whether we want to incorporate it if we were going to spend 40.
Yeah, I get your point. It might be it might look like it's more than, but will probably pay more dividends in the long run.
The point of thought is that it's not so much what you're going to do, and it's not so much what you're going to do with it, and whether it's going to be a pitch or whether it's going to be a mugger. The point is, if you are intending for that to be a project, then you need to have the budget
Put the money
set
there.
aside for it. If it is as it should be, it's something that the community do want, because it's something that we always keep getting asked for in members' comments and everything else. So we know that there's the need for it. We know that they want the floodlights back as soon as possible. So I don't think there's any question over actually, you know, will the council do the floodlight project, because I think it's certainly something that the community of Theale and the residents of Theale want. And the point of it is that now is the time to put the relevant budget in place, especially if there are especially if it gets imposed in Parliament next year, of there being a capping on the precepts. And this is again something else that was being talked about by Alan and also by Colin, was that if it hasn't come in yet, but there is talk of it coming in, and obviously if we do get to the point where parish councils are capped, then you're not going to be able to have the provision to do this in the future. So the question is, do it now so that you have it. And like Paul said, if you don't end up using it within that budget year, then all you have to do is justify it. Now, if that's a case of, well, we had 4 months of snow and the ground was hard, and so you couldn't do it, so the project has been delayed by 12 months, or, you know, the council decided that, you know, the project needed to be done at a later date, as long as you can justify it, it is classed as being adhered to. So as long as you can justify it, and as long as you can confirm why you're doing it, what you've done it for, it is lawful.
And equally, if the council decides not to spend 40 grand on floodlights, but 40 grand as part of a mugger, that's fine.
Yeah.
Paul, couple of questions on things that are in here or perhaps not. Pavilion maintenance. So we spent money on the inside this year. Some of the outside is probably reaching the end of its life. Some of the wooden doors. Is there anything in there that covers that sort of stuff?
Yeah. Right towards the end, there's repairs and maintenance.
Yeah.
Now, there's a quote for Gary just cleaning and painting the doors. But you raise a good point. Maybe some of those doors actually need replacing.
Yeah, I think some of those look rather tired and weathered.
Yeah.
Yes, I did see that, and I raise it because I'm not sure that would cover replacement.
No, that was just for painting.
And the other thought I had on here is generally every year we get some form of unexpected bill from the village hall for maintenance, whether that's car park, sewage pumps, water pipes. There's normally something that comes in. Is that covered in here somewhere? It's normally a couple of grand.
For car park and
we've had last year, I think we had car parking. This year we had sewage pump. There's normally some significant maintenance that comes in.
Well, there's a contingency of just under 8 grand.
Okay.
The other thing, obviously, Paul, just to obviously give you the information is the items that you've specified could also be put in as part of the earmark reserves.
Yep.
So we have quite a lot of earmark reserves. Now, if you wished for items like that to be allowed for, again, you could allow for those within the earmarked reserves.
I'm thinking of what our true running costs are for maintenance, Becky, rather than taking
but it's not
something out of the
that's
reserve
given annually, is it? The car park maintenance is that was a one-off, and well, hopefully a one-off, and not required again for some few years.
So I'm thinking our general maintenance number probably doesn't cover the maintenance. So whilst it's different things every year, our general maintenance number is quite low for buildings that are quite old and facilities that are quite old.
We've increased the grounds maintenance as well.
Yeah, how do we get to that number? So we had 0 in the budget for this year, and we spent 5.5 grand. Previous year we spent 1,700. What's the reason for those large fluctuations.
I'm so I'm just a bit behind one. So going back to Paul, do you mean the repairs and maintenance you think is too low?
Yes.
Okay. Given the age of the building, etc.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just thinking, you know, things like our roof repairs as well all fall, for me, they all fall within there.
Do you have a figure in mind, Paul?
Depends on whether we include some of the replacement for some of the things like our doors, etc. That if we're going to do them in there, I would probably be inclined to double that number.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with that.
Yep. So we're talking about 7,000.
Mm.
Mm.
Seem reasonable to me.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, Dan.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to understand the grounds maintenance. So we got 1,780 in 1 year, and then a budgeted amount of 0 and a cost expenditure of 5,500, and then next year's budget 8.2.
Is that where we've consolidated, Paul? Just councillors, just to give you some information, what Paul's tried to do is obviously within the accounts package, each has its own nominal code for where things are put within the accounts package. And going through it with Colin, sort of said, well, you know, we had unnecessarily duplication. So basically, there was nominal code 401 and nominal code 409, which actually could have gone together and been one nominal code. So on that basis, there's a few things in here which you'll see for next year. The budget is higher than what it was this year, but actually what that entails is because the nominal codes have been bunched together to be one set reading, as it were.
Yeah.
For ease clarity.
That grounds maintenance figure of 8,284, that is this year's expected annual figure plus the quote that Schofield gave for the annual maintenance of the bund once the seeds have been sown. Now, Ian Hopcroft, I think in the last meeting or the one before, thought it was a bit high, and he wondered whether the council might be able to do some of it itself. So again, this is a worst case scenario.
Okay.
I think we should definitely go out to tender for that contract. That seems really hard. Trimming a bund.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, for your budgeting process, I understand. Yeah, going to the most conservative option.
That could be Steele's national sort of fundraiser, couldn't it? Really, you know, like Somerset has cheese rolling and someone else has welly wanging. We could have bun trimming, couldn't we?
We just buy a couple of sheep.
So many levels.
Any other councillors have any other questions with regards to the budget? Obviously, this is for you to have a look at, and obviously, if there were any questions and obviously any adjustments, we're hoping that between myself, Paul, Alan, and Colin, that we kind of got the figures to where they should be, and where they are best are. And obviously, you know, there are some councillors tonight that have asked for increases, which is great, you know, and that's absolutely fine. Obviously, if there are any others that have come to light that you want Paul to make note of so that he can then make the adjustments to the spreadsheet, show it will come out and show the final figure at the top, which shows obviously the precept, the tax base and the Band D tax base and the increased percentage, bits and pieces like that. Obviously, we won't know that tax base we haven't been told yet. So when you obviously agree the budget in January, that's going to change. We were basing it on this year's tax base, so it's going to be slightly different. But is there anything else, or are councillors quite happy with what they're seeing this evening?
Just a couple of things on income. I think just looking at we've taken the income down based on COVID for a number of lines, haven't we? We haven't really adjusted the income for John Cumber Hall.
No,
Mhm.
I was waiting for somebody to say that.
I think we should adjust the income for that as well and make an assumption that around the fees as well.
Mm. Well, I think that will change, obviously, depending on the outcome of what the discussion is with Mary in the meeting.
But yeah, you're right. It's going to be less than what I've put there, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we should take the income right down for that.
Yeah.
We've zeroed out the Peter Gooch room for income. It would probably make sense to zero out the income from John Cumber Hall.
Yep.
And this income is just the management fee we get paid, isn't it? So even if the hall
that's
opens
correct,
and it's
yeah.
full of hirers, we're not going to see any of that income.
No, because that goes into the John Cumber Hall account.
Yeah, we know.
Obviously, if that situation changes, then it changes.
Yeah, okay.
It funds Marina's salary, the cleaner, and a third of Jan C's salary.
Yeah.
And I presume the pavilion incomes have already been adjusted in line with the decision about training fees.
The income is zero on the budget for the pavilion.
Well, I was thinking more of the hiring of the pitches.
Oh, the cricket.
That, but also the North Street playing fields, because there was the agenda item about not charging for training sessions, provided they are booked by.
We don't charge at the moment, so there's no loss.
Well, junior football is at zero.
Just making sure.
And I wouldn't North Street, the additional field, I don't think will come online next financial year anyway.
No, but I was just making sure that I'm reading it right, that's all.
Becky, are you asking us to make a decision on this, or is that for January?
At all. Well, in principle, I'm asking you that if you that at the moment that you're happy with what's been set out for you, that obviously come January's meeting, it's going to be slightly different because we're going to have the tax base then, and obviously Paul's going to make the adjustments to what's been discussed tonight. But I think that, you know, the answer was to obviously, you know, to basically in advance of obviously next month's meeting, just for council to agree in principle on the basis that the adjustments are made that Paul needs to make from the conversations that have been had this evening, and obviously the adjustment for the tax base, that councillors would be happy with the budget that's been set out so far.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And hopefully this will save time come the end of January.
Next month, yeah. Yeah, it will
We
save
can hope,
time
Paul.
next month, because basically all you're going to see is a difference of a tax base and the additions to what Paul's going to be put in. So it is it is asking for council to agree on principle to provisionally approve the budget as has been discussed this evening.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Good with that?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Everyone in favour of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No objections?
No.
Fabulous. That should make next month actually going through it a little bit quicker then, Paul.
While you're here, does the council want to discuss this again at the beginning of January, or just at the meeting on the 25th or whenever it is?
25th, that's my birthday. We haven't got a meeting then, have we?
Or 27th? I don't know. Yeah, it's the 25th.
I think probably the best thing will be to obviously determine, Paul, for you to determine what's actually on the agenda for next month, if it's not too much of a hectic agenda and we do have the tax-based figures, I don't see any reason why we can't discuss it at next month's meeting, and then it's one thing ticked off the box and it's done early, and you can submit it to Where Sparks, you know, and be quite happy in the fact that you can, it's one task you can tick it off your list a bit earlier. I don't see any reason to delay it till the 25th if we can do it at January's meeting, as long as we've got all the information that we require for it.
Yeah.
So unless anything horrendous comes in that changes the agenda to be miles long for January, I would go with it, put it in January's meeting.
Good.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely. Okie dokie. Moving on then, item 12, to approve a request from Spotlight UK Sports Academy to use the recreation ground for sports training.
Do we have, it's quite a lot of time, isn't it? Is it every evening they're looking at 4 to 6 p.m.
They're also looking for weekends in the winter evenings on North Street playing field.
I thought they were looking at daytimes on North Street in the winter.
Regarding North Street playing field, is this a venue we could possibly use on Saturday, Sunday mornings where it wouldn't be floodlit across the winter evenings? If so, we would be really interested in using this venue, as we now have 2 to 3 sports classes funded for sale.
And they said it was mostly football and
depend on
Did we get any information from the other councils that currently provide them with facilities as to whether they charge?
The ones I contacted were Thatcham and Tilehurst. Tilehurst hasn't made a decision yet. And Thatcham...
Oh, right, so they're not actively using Tilehurst. They've done the same to Tilehurst as they have to us.
I think they've done the same to all the councils in this area.
Oh, interesting, because their letter suggests that they're already active in some of those areas.
And Thatcham do charge, but I'm not sure whether they've actually started yet.
Mm.
But they did say that they're going to charge.
Mm. Okay. Because the area they're on to use is youth pitch, isn't it, at the end of North Street playing fields?
Yeah, at the northmost end.
Yeah, which is currently not being used by a youth team, is it?
At all.
No.
Okay. Okay.
I think it wasn't clear in the proposal as to, so they were talking about the days they would be interested in, so the Monday to Friday when the light gets better and the weekends.
Mm.
Was that is their range of interest, or they want it on every single day? Which would be interested to get some more information on that. But I mean, in principle, I'd like
my concern
was
was that once this COVID sort of subsides a bit more, you know, the likelihood of us having a youth team approach to be able to use North Street playing fields is very likely. What I wouldn't want to do is then obviously hinder that by giving this charity the use of that pitch for. By the sounds of it, it's not just, they're not specifically football there, it's just active sports, isn't it, that children from all different backgrounds get to obviously be involved in active sport. So I think at the moment, while it's not being used for a team, to use the pitch would obviously at least give it some use, and you know, and it would support them at getting children that currently aren't active to be active, meet with people and bits and pieces. Obviously I think there's obviously restrictions on that at the moment with COVID and everything else. The sports ground would generally be used for football matches on a weekend. So on that basis, I'd probably be inclined to say that weekend use wouldn't be available, but allow them to maybe have 3 days a week on a weekday.
Yeah, they'd have a problem on a Sunday morning, especially if Calcutt and Wayback are at home at the same time.
Yeah.
What's the problem there, Stuart? Because they wouldn't be using the youth pitch, would they?
Parking.
Okay. Yeah.
I know they say they're going to try and get parents or carers to drop off, but if that isn't the issue and they end up with 45 cars, we're going to have a problem if the other two teams.
No, makes sense. Yeah.
That's the only issue I see, but chances of that happening with the league we're all in is pretty good that they might just give us all home games at the same time.
I would agree with Becky's suggestion about weekdays, saying 3 days a week. I'm a bit undecided about the weekends. I'd like to say, should we give them one of the days, maybe the Saturday morning?
Well, what's at the weekend? The matches are in the mornings, aren't they, for the clubs?
Yeah.
And there's little usage in the afternoon, is my recollection, at North Street.
Yeah, there's no one out there in the afternoons on a Sunday. Well, not at the moment.
What time though? Because I think that they're suggesting weekends in the winter months.
They want morning. They want Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Well,
so I'm saying we could offer them an afternoon, but it depends what time in the afternoon. We could say, look, you can't have a morning, but we can give you an afternoon.
Yeah.
But if it's too late in the afternoon in the winter months, that's not going to work for them.
Well, if we said if we were going to do it, if we said post 1 o'clock or 1:30 or something like that, that's at the darkest months, that's still 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's enough time.
What about just reducing their capacities? They talk about up to 45 kids, but then in other sections they say they have classes up to 14. So if they wanted it on a Sunday morning, we might say they could have the space, but they can only have up to 14 due to parking concerns.
Could they not use the rec in winter?
Could do.
Where would you be suggesting, Jan?
Over by the floodlight area.
Good point.
Yeah. So
Well, I suppose that's a possibility at the moment, but obviously that will change once the floodlights or anything like that or works or anything are started. So yeah, you'd be going on a proviso that it was subject to change. The other thing, obviously, you have to consider is whilst it's great that we're getting sports involved to use our facilities, but the facilities are also there for others and not just sports. So what we don't want to be doing is overloading the whole area with constant sports all the time that then doesn't allow for your general walkers, your general dog walkers and your general kids to be able to go out on a Sunday with a ball with the mate and do a kickabout, which is what the open space is there for as well.
We're only putting them on one pitch though, aren't we?
I think we've got plenty of space.
In normal times, that youth pitch down the bottom, how much would it actually be used? From the likes of Tireless Panthers and Seal Tigers and all them.
Well, it depends. If there was one team using it, it'd be every other. It would probably be sometimes every weekend, or every other weekend, depending on a home or away match.
Right.
And then if you had two teams using it, and one was on a Saturday and one was on a Sunday, then it'd be used constantly. But obviously, you try to avoid using it constantly because if there was someone using it constantly on a Saturday and a Sunday, you get, like Stuart will tell you, if you get bad weather, you're not going to be able to use the pitch. If someone's churned it up on the Saturday, the Sunday is going to be absolutely useless.
And if they're out there 3 days through the winter, depending on what they're doing, if everything's churned up, it's going to get limited use. but that all depends on what the weather's like and how old the kids are and what they're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Can I
You've
suggest
also
we
got
make
the
them an offer
problem
of
that
3 days in the week and an afternoon at the weekend?
Yeah, I think I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, I think that's a good offer.
And we time
Okay.
bind it by the next 12 months or something like that.
Yeah, if we put like a review on it.
What about charges?
I think for me, I would be happy to give them the use of the field. If they want to use the pavilion, then that involves some cleaning charges for us, doesn't it? And opening up charges. And we should do those given it's a charitable operation, we should do those at cost for them.
Yep, I agree.
I think that obviously what you've got to remember is they probably wouldn't have access to the pavilion if it was on a weekend, because you'll have the men's teams using the pavilion at a weekend. If it's within the weekday, the other thing to consider is we'll need to obviously get clarification as to what usage they're looking for the pavilion. If it's just for toilet facilities, then that's slightly different, because obviously we can, you can have it so that it's cordoned off that they can only use the toilets. But obviously if we're back to hiring as usual and there's someone in the hall, then obviously they're not going to have the access to the hall or anything like that, because there will be a hirer in there.
I did specifically ask if use of the toilets in the pavilion would be required, and she did come back and say we would like to be able to have that use.
Yeah, they said that they would like to. They didn't say it was a deal breaker though, did they? So
No.
I think we can put to them what the offer is, and we can have a conversation with them around whether that meets their needs or how close that is to their needs or not. They've made a fairly broad brush ask in there.
Okay.
I think I suspect they will want to use the pavilion, but they won't want to pay all of the hours. Or sorry, not the pavilion, but the changing or the toilet facilities in there. They won't necessarily want to pay all of the hours that they're there. So if we can cover our costs, everyone gets some benefit out of this. We get some use. Kids get the use of the fields, and this charity get to support the children, and we cover our costs for opening up the facilities that we've got. If they just want to use the field, it might be different across weekdays and weekends as well.
Yeah.
Is there any information as to what kids are eligible for this opportunity? I know it said it was about underprivileged, but do they have to be referred to this charity, or?
I've only received what I've given you.
Yeah, it's interesting because she does state that they've already been in contact with schools in Thiel regarding the free spaces we are keeping. So part of me is also wondering why they haven't actually spoken with Thiel Green about using Thiel Green's facilities.
They may well have, Lisa. I mean, I think that the letter indicated that they were already using some of the areas which by the sounds of it, from what the extra information that Paul has got from the clerks of those councils, whilst the letter said that they're already actively using Thatcham and Tullis, they're not. They're actually asking the same question as what they've asked to us. So,
all right. So she says we will be holding other sessions in surrounding areas, i.e. Calcutta, Tilehurst.
They're probably looking for the best deal they can get from what Parish Council.
Oh, I wouldn't disagree with that either, Stuart. I don't have a problem with this in principle, and I think Paul's suggestion of offering them three days a week and one day a weekend is perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, I just wonder whether it shouldn't be on a 6 monthly contract that can be reviewed.
Absolutely.
A 12 monthly contract, depending on what other sports teams and that we get coming in and works. So, maybe to put it on a 6 monthly contract. It might also be nice, and it might be helpful for Paul, is if there were a couple of councillors that obviously wish to coordinate with Paul on this with regards to the final details of when and how much, and for Paul to get a bit of support from a couple of councillors, like a working committee sort of thing to put this together.
I'm happy to volunteer.
Okay. That would be good, Dan.
Becky, you said, we'll sort of let them have it for nothing. Who's going to pick up the bill for cleaning up all the dogs markets over there? Because you can't have kids training with that, and there is quite a lot down that bottom end. Is that going to be down to us, or do we say to them, look, there's a load of dogs up there, you're going to have to clean it up?
Well, we weren't giving it to them for free. We were obviously giving them a nominal charge on that.
Well, you don't put a charge on for somebody going over there and cleaning up before they go on, because a lot of them don't clear up behind the dogs. There is quite a lot over there.
I thought Paul's proposal was to allow them use of the fields free of charge, but to charge them cost only if they wanted to use the toilet facilities in the pavilion. Was that, did I understand that correctly?
That's what I suggested doing, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, question is, who picks up the dog poo from the other two pitches then?
I do.
Put it in the user agreement. They'll have to clear their own dog poo from their pitch.
Yeah, you're right, Dan. That's what happened.
Yeah. Well, exactly that. Then, if it's within the agreement that they have to, assess the pitch for cleanliness themselves, then why not have that in their agreement then?
Absolutely, don't disagree with that either. If they're getting it for nothing, they can't expect
that. At the end of the day, it will be part of their risk assessment and their safeguarding anyway, because it's a public open space. Yeah.
I think it still needs looking into a bit more, because if you actually read their letter, somewhere down it says they want kids to be playing in a non-competitive way so that everybody can go out and enjoy themselves, which I think leads me that they're going to end up wanting to play some sort of league games and stuff on that pitch, and I reckon it's their way of getting around it.
Well, again, I specifically asked what type of sports were intended to take place, and they've come back and said they're looking to begin by offering football and rounders.
Yeah.
But again, Stuart, this is where it comes into play of the agreement that is then set out by the council, that if it stipulates within that agreement that this is for, this is for the enjoyment only, this is not for tournaments or leagues or anything like that, and anything like that will be considered a charge, need to be reviewed by the council and will be a chargeable act as per all our other teams, then as long as it's within the contract base, it should be absolutely fine.
Yeah, which
is why I said it would probably be a good idea if there were some councillors that wish to work alongside Paul with regards to putting this together, that have an insight of what would be required, so that the council can make an informed decision.
No, he can put me down if he wants.
I'm happy to help if you need more than two.
There you go. You've got three there, Paul. Would that be helpful?
I'm sure 3 is more than enough. Yeah.
Fabulous.
Thank
you, Councillor Baker, Councillor Cox, and Councillor Coker for that.
Is the council happy for us 4 to sort out all the details ourselves and go ahead with it?
Yes.
I think the consensus was that the council were happy for this to go ahead on what Paul Clifford, Councillor Clifford had suggested. We just need to iron out the finer details with regards to a contract. And I think that is council quite happy for that to be done within the councillors and Paul?
Yep.
Yeah? Fabulous.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'm conscious of the time, ladies and gents, so let's try and wrap this up as quickly as we can. Item 13 is to approve the installation of the David Ogilvie bench as per the attached proposal.
I like the lest we forget one best.
Sorry?
I like the lest we forget one best.
Is that the one with the doves on?
Third one.
Yeah. With the red flowers.
Yeah,
So did
I
I.
actually looked at it as I thought the dove one was the best because there weren't so many spiky bits for people to
Yeah.
actually garrot
I was gonna say the
themselves on.
first two look uncomfortable with barbed wire.
A bit more sturdy. Some of the other ones, I think, how is that?
Yeah.
It looks a bit more comfortable to sit on as well.
Yeah, and I think I noticed that also the Lest We Forget one, apparently they want to charge extra if the doves are in white. So are we happy that the doves would be in black?
Well,
And
I
that
let's
would
think,
only be the
I
poppies
think
that
that
were in
white will
colour.
eventually fade.
Sorry?
I think black's perfectly reasonable. That white could potentially chip and get tatty over time.
Well, I was also quite worried of people vandalising and getting a marker pen and white,
Yeah.
black on white.
Yeah, agree totally.
It's a shame.
You know, not that the
It wouldn't be the Thiel children.
of course not. Okay, so is that a unanimous consensus for the
Yeah.
Lest We Forget bench?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And do you need anything further, Paul?
Nope. I think that's fine.
No. Perfect. Okay. So item 14. So to resolve that the public leaves the meeting for the remaining items pursuant to the Body's Admissions to Meetings Act 1960, Section 1(2), Part 2.